What's the most awkward situation you've ever been in? When I was in second grade, my brother and I would always be picked up after school by my dad. We had a green van with a red stripe on the side, so my brother grabs my hand and storms us up to the car. He rips open the door, sits us down, buckles me in, and then says, "Can we get McDonald's on the way home?" We both look up and there is two middle-aged adults sitting in the front seat that are obviously not our family. They stare at us. We stare at them. In my little brain we've been staring at each other for at least 10 minutes at this point. My brother unbuckles me, unbuckles himself. We get out and walk away. No words were exchanged. We then checked who was in the car before getting in from that point forward. I was sitting in class and the kid next to me farted and I said, "God bless you," as if it were a sneeze. Okay, so me and some friends were at a restaurant and a buddy of mine was telling us about this new girl he just started going out with a few days back. Well, another friend started telling us about this girl that he banged the previous night. The conversation went on for a minute and finally somebody asked for the name of the girl that he had banged, and it turns out it was a girl that the other friend had started dating a few days earlier. Q narrowly avoided fight as we convinced him it's better to find out she's now rather than later. The two guys still no longer speak though. When I was a kid I hugged a random dude because I thought it was my dad. Even better how this dude's son was standing next to him. You established yourself as his new son. Ultimate power move. I walked in on my roommate in senior year of college banging his girlfriend. We had a rule about a hat on the door if we wanted privacy. There was no hat when I came back one morning and I got a full eye-level side view of him and her mid-thrust because he had the top bunk. They kind of laughed it off but was pretty awkward for me. Could have been worse. At least it was his girlfriend. Yeah, right. Could have been original poster's mom instead. I was a teenager with a pretty standard so far. I walked downstairs and had to tuck it in my pajamas so the head is sticking straight up and the erection is pinned against the body so the isn't noticeable. Well, when I put my t-shirt on it fell behind the tip, so if you looked at my waist line you could clearly see the tip of my. I was talking to my mom for a few minutes and she was flushed red in the face and quickly trying to conversation, not something my mom is known for. I walked away, saw what was going on and didn't know what the hell to do. We never discussed it, but because things were so awkward at dinner, I'm pretty sure my mom knew that I realized it happened as well. When I was a kid, we were on holiday and decided to go to a church. While we were there I decided that I would be funny if I would slap my dad's with both hands. So I ran in full speed to maximize the impact of the slap. I ended up slapping a stranger who also happened to walk next to a woman with a stroller in his hands, which made me think it was my dad. It was even worse that my parents saw it as well. A gentleman was outside the hotel smoking in his holy jogging pants. I really wanted to tell him his balls were showing, but I couldn't summon the courage to do it. He wanted to chat about Magic the Gathering. Not awkward for me, but I was the reason for it. I served for a couple years and worked multiple restaurants in that time frame. I worked at a Denny's night shift. Best and worst job for many reasons. Anyways, there was a regular that came in often, drunk as a skunk and nasty as hell. He tipped really well but was so nasty to us girls. It never fazed me, so I served him often. He offered many times to pay for extra service and tried to get me to leave with him often. Of course I never did, but a couple months later, in working a new place little more high-end, I worked mornings here. And this was a Sunday morning church rush. Guess who was sat in my section? My nasty regular from my last job with his entire family. His wife, kids, parents, the whole group, fresh out of church. The look on this man's face when I walked up and said hello, he was red as a fire truck, and I made it worse by asking if he remembered me. He left me a huge tip, probably because I didn't bring up his nasty mouth and grabby hands from his late drunken nights. My 79-year-old mother-in-law with Alzheimer's telling us that she had had the previous night with another resident of her nursing home. She had been celibate for 20 years up until then. We think My mom and I were in the car and the vehicle in front of us had a fake taxi sticker on it, and my mom asked me what a fake taxi was. I was riding in the passenger seat with my mom, who has always been strict and very tight-knit several years ago, when for some reason she decided to completely open up to me about all of her drug experimentation and exploits in the 60s, and the time she snorted lines with Steve Jobs at a fancy restaurant in the 80s. It was a very uncomfortable eye-opener and I was trapped listening to it. Your mom did see with Steve Jobs. Her ex-husband was an executive with the firm that managed Apple's first large-scale ad campaign. After the first Macintosh launch, they went out to a 5-star restaurant in LA and railed lines of blow under the table apparently. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that knowledge. I remember my by far worst moment. I was at my aunt's house for Christmas meetup. My whole family from my mother's side is always there and we were just talking about some stuff. The Life Pro Tips subreddit came into my mind, and I told her that there are some tips like you should drive faster when you are drunk, because driving drunk is dangerous and you get home faster. I was laughing. She just sat there, looking at me like frozen, and then told me with her voice breaking, "That would be funny, but did you know that one of my best friends died 2 months ago because he was driving drunk, and he was too fast?" She then started to cry. I really wanted to stop existing at that moment. Trust me. My skirt got caught on the concrete bench at work and got pulled down when I went to get up. I showed a crowd of coworkers my Everyone just kinda stood there trying not to laugh while I tried to collect my dignity. Bad day not to wear underwear. One time in college, I snuck into my Ra's room and hid under the blanket on his top bunk. My goal was to scare him when he came in and settled down a bit. He ended up coming in with his girlfriend and began making out with her. After a good lifetime couple moments, I jumped up and ran out. No saving it. When I was 13 or 14, the guy the first had a crush on took me to a park to talk and learn to know each other. We sat under some trees and everything was going pretty well, until guess a bird shat on my head while I was talking to him. I had to go back home to wash my hair a few times. My best friend waiting to tell her parents that she's gay until when I was over for dinner. Most George Costanza moment of my life. I was flying back home from a business trip in Gar. Before we all got on the airplane, everyone noticed that we would be flying with 3 military canines and their handlers. All good. Point being, everyone noticed them. And if they hadn't, the pilot was kind enough to point them out when he came over the intercom to give his spiel. A round of applause for our service members and the brave working dogs was given. Hours later in the flight, the flight crew had turned off the lights. I needed to take a piss, and moved forward in the cabin toward the restrooms. Well, one of the dogs was black and I didn't see his paw sticking into the aisle. Cue the dog yelping and crying. Have you ever had 150 people hate you before? It was made so much worse by the fact that I am a veteran, and I love dogs. I am the son of a veteran who was a canine handler when he served. But how the heck am I going to explain that to a plane load of people giving me the stink eye for being the guy who stepped on the dog? Was unexpectedly in the car ride with my boyfriend's parents on their way to sign their divorce papers. I used to run a restaurant and had inherited an employee with a slew of mental health issues. She had massive anxiety issues and just couldn't handle the pressure of working in a restaurant. She'd break down and cry over simple mistakes if she felt she was making too many. It was extremely unfortunate, but I was terribly underprepared to coach someone like that. One day, during downtime, the cooks were shooting the and recounting stories of weird ex-coworkers. I opened up my yap and said, who was the one who kept crying every time they'd screw up? She was 2 feet away and literally responded with me. So are you two dating? He said yes at the same time I said no, to which his friend told him, I told you you didn't ask clearly enough. Edit, I accidentally mixed up him saying yes and me saying no. When I was a kid, my family's van broke down, so we all had to squeeze into my dad's car to go to a funeral. Anyways, my older sister had to sit on my lap. Yep, you guessed it, I got her. And she freaked out and started screaming. I am someone who never feels awkward and doesn't get embarrassed. But this moment got me good. I was doing orientation for my college. I wanted to meet the dean of my department and make a good impression. I walk in his office and he is bent over behind his desk looking for something. I introduce myself and stick my hand out to shake his hand. He sits up and he has no arms. I look at him and look at my hand and I am freaking out. It felt like my hand was out there for an eternity and I did the only thing I could think of to do. I ran my hand through my hair and tried to play it off. He never said anything and just started talking to me, but I felt like I was actually going to die of embarrassment.